Rashee Rice looks like he's done for the season. Coop, how are the Chiefs going to adjust without what looked to be the league winner? Rashee Rice was giving you wide receiver one production every single week, goes down on this impossibly painful fluke play, gets injured essentially by Patrick Mahomes. How are the Chiefs going to recover here? Because everything was centered around Rashee Rice for multiple weeks.
It's crazy, man, because Rashee Rice basically is pulling the 2019 Tyreek Hill, right? Off-field incident, and we get a discount at ADP. He's looking like a league winner. Boom, injury. So we'll have to see how they're going to adjust. Obviously, Travis Kelce, if you watch that game, all of a sudden woke up from hibernation and started actually doing something out there. So his targets are going to go up. We watched Xavier Worthy lead the team in snaps. So like he's probably going to be the one that gets the next boost. The next question is this. This team loves using Justin Watson basically as like a split guard. Just a big body out there that plays a ton of snaps and blocks on run plays. If he gets the second snap share, that could mean that there's really nobody else that's interesting. If somebody like Juju, who's probably the next man up, becomes a full-time player now, he'd probably be the most interesting. Or maybe Sky Moore leapfrogs, everybody gets in their shot. I doubt it. But for me, it's like if Watson's the next guy in terms of snaps, then it's just Kelce and Worthy we care about. If Juju can somehow surpass Watson, maybe he becomes interesting. But I mean, barring a trade for a star from somewhere else, I'm not sure we're getting anybody outside Worthy and Kelce.
You get a ton of pressure on Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy, they used their first-round pick. This is the first wide receiver that Kansas City selected in the first round since 2011. And now you're going to kind of see why, or you're going to see that maybe they overrated him a little bit. The rubber sort of meets the road here because it's going to be impossible for them to use Xavier Worthy as just like the big play guy in the offense.
Right.
Travis Kelce gets 9 targets yesterday, but before that, he had 12 targets in the first 3 games. So there's been regression there. He's sort of has this contingent upside now where he's going to get more like first down looks, primary read looks. So he gets boosted a little bit. I'll say for me, a little bit of the wild card is going to be what they do with Kareem Hunt and Samaje Perine, how Carson Steele sort of phased out. Perine had like the random touchdown and no use in the passing game. But if you just do a little self-scouting, he suddenly becomes like sort of a reliable receiver for them, as does Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's the one where I think he's going to be a little bit underrated this week. He had 9 touchdowns last year. He's old, but he's not dust. And now he becomes a guy that they're going to have to give 15 touches a game to, 14 touches a game to. You have to adjust this offense. Patrick Mahomes is a low-end QB1 right now. There's no nice way to say it. It's sort of where he was last year with a lack of receiving weapons, a reduced Kelce. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And if you had Rashee Rice, it's complete pain. I know we both had a lot of them. This is about the most painful injury we've seen all year, huh? Isn't it, Coop?
Yeah, it's brutal, man. And there's no replacement. Like there's no value that jumps because a lot of these other teams, like you look at the Packers, for instance, I mean, immediately Dontavian Wicks goes in with Christian Watson, right? This team doesn't really have that. It probably would have been Hollywood Brown, but he got hurt before everybody else did, right? It's not like they didn't prepare for this. It's just it's been unfortunate. And probably the worst part of the whole thing is that the defense is still playing pretty good, right? Like we saw in the past when the defense wasn't good, Mahomes had to play like a superhero and throw the ball 50 touchdowns in a season. Like with a pretty good defense here with Trent McDuffie and Chris Jones and George Karlaftis and Nick Bolton and these guys, like they don't necessarily even need to do it. They could just keep kind of lazily grind along like they have been to 4-0. This team's undefeated and it hasn't looked amazing because it doesn't need to. Right? It's kind of a bad situation across the board for fantasy football.
100%. One situation that's not a bad situation for fantasy football, though, is the return of Jordan Love to Green Bay. And we get this sort of wild game yesterday where Minnesota jumps to the early lead and Green Bay sort of looks dead. Jordan Love, the negative is he had 3 interceptions, but the positive is this guy's awesome. 389 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, his first game back. So we've seen like 2 big passing performances from Jordan Love in 2 games. We lose Christian Watson. You know, this is sort of like an evergreen. We could have done this last year, Coop. We lose Christian Watson again, high ankle sprain, going to be gone a while, but a bunch of positive performances. The first one is we have to start talking about Jaden Reed as a wide receiver 1. In the 2 games with Jordan Love, he's had 138 receiving yards and 139 receiving yards. Finds the end zone in both games. Of course, in week 1, also gave you that incredible rushing touchdown. I mean, War Daddy Jaden Reed is just awesome right now, especially with Jordan Love. And the guy that is super interesting to me, and I want to get your thoughts on two guys, actually. Tucker Kraft gets 9 targets, 6 catches, and a touchdown. Looks like by far and away of going to be a part of the weekly offense. And Dontavian Wicks gets 13 targets, and he gets 2 touchdown catches. So Wicks has, I believe, 3 touchdown grabs on the year. And this was one where the whole narrative with Dontavian Wicks was Christian Watson can't stay healthy. Wicks is going to be that guy. Played well last year. Now he's got like a golden opportunity. So your thoughts on the Green Bay offense, just how bullish are you? And then what do you think about these two players, Kraft and Wicks?
Right. And it's funny, because Wicks has had trouble with drops and he had a couple drops in the game. Things like drops and fumbles, though, they only matter to us when the guy is on the fringe and dropping the ball or fumbling the ball loses trust. And then you lose those snaps, which before Watson was hurt, we might be concerned by that because if he's dropping the ball, maybe they don't give him as many snaps. Once Watson got hurt, he's not on the fringe anymore. Drops and fumbles do not matter for a player that gets every snap. We've seen it with Deontay Johnson for years. He's dropped a ton of passes, but it doesn't matter because he plays every snap and they trust the guy and they're never going to bench him over that. So for now, Wicks is in that chair, right? The thing about Tucker Kraft for me is that this week we saw an abnormally high volume. You're not going to see a team call 60 pass plays in most weeks. Last week, the Bears called more than 60 pass plays. They ran 90 snaps, and we saw Cole Kmet get 10 targets, right? But everybody on the team got 10. And then this week, in a normal game script, Cole Kmet goes back in the bottle. So to me, a guy like Tucker Kraft, if you come to me and you say, I think that Jayden Reed leads this team in targets, and I think Tucker Kraft deserves the second most, then if that's the case, then you're adding Tucker Kraft, you're starting Tucker Kraft. If you're somebody like me that kind of believes that it should be a combination of Reed, Romeo Doubs, and Wicks getting those targets ahead of Kraft, then maybe Kraft isn't as interesting. More of a spot start or a filler type guy, like we've been using some of these other guys like K. Dotton, who's the third fiddle, Colby Parkinson, who typically would be the third fiddle. It's like these guys are kind of all over the place. So to me, Tucker Kraft not nearly as interesting as Reed, Doubs, and Wicks, right? Those are the guys that are now going to play the full snap shares, no more rotating, and that's a good thing with Jordan Love. The question is where the targets are going to go. I mean, Jayden Reed's the most exciting because, as you pointed out, he gets those manufactured touches. He's always going to get screens. He's always going to get a couple handoffs. Like that's that. It's like the Deebo Samuel. That's this big separator when you go back and through the years. What separates the wide receiver 2s from the wide receiver 3s in fantasy, a lot of times it is Deebo Samuel getting those carries, right? Deebo Samuel was the only wide receiver 2 last year that didn't get 100 targets. Why? He had 5 rushing touchdowns. Curtis Samuel in years past. Chase Claypool the year he had 2 touchdowns. That's the separator for a lot of these guys in that range. So Jayden Reed to me most interesting. Are you Wicks over Doubs moving forward, as assuming this injury is serious?
Yeah, I'm definitely Wicks over Doubs because we've seen a little bit more spikes out of Wicks, and I think he's more of a natural talent than Doubs. Doubs is a guy where it's sort of like, can you just get out of the way? Like he's the kind of guy that for fantasy purposes kind of blocks, usually just kind of blocks somebody we're into. Right. But Wicks we've seen it last year with Wicks, and I think like the market didn't fully adjust to Wicks because he's a 6th round pick in the NFL draft. But just in terms of talent, like it's there. And you nailed it with Reed. Reed gets some manufactured touches. He's also unbelievably explosive. And Coop, now easily the most pedigreed and successful player in this offense. Like Jayden Reed to the moon. The running game's in good shape. I think that Wilson's carved in this like 33% type role. So it's kind of what LaFleur wants, with Jacobs getting like the majority of the carries, but being able to mix in a second back. I think this offense could really get off to a nice long streak. And also, they lost Jair Alexander, and it creates more opportunities for them to play in better game scripts. That defense was trending up in the right direction. It'll be super interesting to see how this game flow goes this week against LA, but definitely start your Packers. And another player who is super positive, you got to talk about the big dog. Big dog went nuts last night, 199 yards, had like a 22-mile-an-hour run, Coop. At like, it's unbelievable how he just accelerates and gets away from that entire defense, outrunning the entire Bills secondary like he was shot out of a cannon.
Yeah, Derrick Henry, the king, has returned. And you talk about game scripts that are, you just mentioned, right, Jair Alexander being out could create some more shootout type game scripts. We were hoping for Ravens pass catchers that would be the case, right? We were hoping that, okay, they're playing the Cowboys, they're playing the Bills, right? They've already played the Chiefs. It's like they're playing these teams they should have to throw. And the Ravens have turned around and said, no, we don't. We don't have to throw. We have Derrick Henry. We're just going to run all over you with Henry and Lamar Jackson. We knew that he would be efficient. Did we know that he was going to be prime Derrick Henry throwing Jaguars out of the club? Like 90-yard touchdown Derrick Henry? Maybe not, right? So that's what happens here. And it's great for Derrick Henry, obviously. It's solid for Lamar Jackson, too, because opening up, getting them down to the red zone where he could score as well. The guys that are getting hurt by it are these pass catchers, right? You only have 12 completions, 13 completions the last 2 games. Obviously, even Zay Flowers, the guy that's playing all the snaps and getting the most targets, he only has 2 targets, right? If you don't need to throw in the NFL, then you don't. Running is the luxury of the winning team. And I'll tell you what, it's even worse for Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely because neither one of those guys played a full snap share. So it's not even a situation where it's like, okay, Mark Andrews is out, Isaiah Likely is in. It's a situation where these guys are both rotating and nobody's. So for the time being, I'm starting Derrick Henry. I'm starting Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers in most cases, but I don't see why. If this team can run all over the Chiefs and run all over the Cowboys and run all over the Bills, but they wouldn't go out next week and run all over the Bengals.
Yeah, it's a really tilting game against Cincinnati. Baltimore starts off the season poorly, now has won these big back-to-back games against the Cowboys and the Bills, and doing so in just like really impressive fashion where the offense is clicking and it's multiple guys flashing. So I thought one thing I thought was interesting is just the utilization of Justice Hill. We saw it in the Kansas City game. We also see it last night against Buffalo, where Justice Hill gets you 6 catches, 70-plus receiving yards, gets a touchdown, and it's sort of like this is their Swiss Army knife player. I'm not sure if he's in handcuff plus territory yet, but he's going to be a really valuable player for you to have on your bench during bye weeks because Justice Hill just has the affinity of this coaching staff and also just the reliance that they have on Derrick Henry. Keaton Mitchell still on the shelf. Justice Hill, if Derrick Henry went down, would be like a very, very valuable start. So into that one, I don't even want to talk about Mark Andrews. It's
painful,
almost,
man.
It's dust time. I don't even want to talk about it. It's too painful. And anybody who has Mark Andrews on their roster doesn't want to hear about it right now either. So we'll save you the aggravation of Mark Andrews. We'll talk about something positive, and that's that Jaden Daniels is in contention to be QB1 overall this year as a rookie. We've touched on Daniels on our previous shows, Coop, but what he's done over a 6-day period where he essentially was flawless in 2 straight games. He's so accurate. It's unbelievable. His accuracy numbers leads the NFL in completion percentage, which is sort of unheard of for a rookie. And he's absolutely flawless in terms of how efficient this Washington offense is. They've just hung big numbers up on Cincinnati and Arizona. Certainly not defenses that we're scared of, but Washington is definitely on the right path. They look like, to me, the favorites in the NFC East right now. Certainly things are going well for them. Brian Robinson gets a touchdown. Jeremy McNichols, who had the huge, it's awesome to see this one because Jeremy McNichols comes off the pine for Austin Eckler in the Cincinnati game. And on the touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin, he just lays out this blitzing linebacker, right? Like literally his first play in the game. And then he has the big game this week. So he filled in effectively. Basically, Cliff Kingsbury is out here flexing on a weekly basis and scoring at will. But to me, it's Jaden Daniels. It's almost impossible to not rank him as like a top 3 quarterback on a weekly basis moving forward, especially with the Mahomes adjustments, especially with Philadelphia losing Smith and Brown and trending sort of down. Like, how impressed are you by Jaden Daniels? Does he have a chance to be QB1 overall? We've never seen a rookie finish QB1 overall. We've seen, I believe Cam Newton finished as like QB3 overall, and I think that's the high. Herbert had a very strong season. RG3 was top 5, but we haven't seen a number 1.
See, also Deshaun Watson as a rookie was kind of on that pace before he got hurt. So we've seen good play, but never at this level. And I'll tell you, I mean, as you pointed out, you look around and with Mahomes dealing with what he's dealing with, Lamar Jackson, I mean, like if they don't need to throw, he doesn't have that juice. And like the bye week could not have come at a better time because not only were they missing Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, but Dallas Goedert's dealing with something too. He left the game this week. So they got a bye week this week, the earliest one. Hopefully those guys get right. But for the time being, and especially for this particular week, I don't see how you don't rank Jaden Daniels. Like you said, top 3, and he's not 3, Theo.
No, he's not.
He might be 1.
And really the only argument against ranking him 1 is that he's a rookie and it's sort of all going to come fall crashing down. Let's defer to one of these veterans like a Josh Allen, a Lamar Jackson, a guy that we've seen them do it before. But it's funny because Daniels is a bit of an older rookie. He's not like Caleb Williams. He's older than Anthony Richardson. The guy was at Arizona State before LSU, transferred. He's got a bunch of starts under his belt. He's a little bit more experienced, and it's showing. The accuracy numbers, again, we referenced, that's the sign of big time maturity. Like the accuracy numbers for Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels are absolutely staggering. And I don't think that in Chicago, Shane Waldron is doing Caleb Williams any favors. And Cliff Kingsbury on the opposite is, you could see him in the mix for some head coaching jobs, whether it's a big time college job or a potential NFL opening, just on how successful he's been this year with Jaden Daniels. And if a team's going to make a quarterback switch, you've now seen him do it with a Kyler Murray in his young days and now a Jaden Daniels in his young days. So for me, like, Cliff's a guy where nobody really wants to compliment him because he was a guy that we were kind of making fun of at the end in Arizona, but he deserves all sorts of praise. What a revenge game, Coop, to go in there and just smoke your former team. You got to love seeing that.
I want to add one last thing on Jaden Daniels and all these mobile quarterbacks is that you have to grade them, then their passing slightly different than most other pocket passers. Because like when guys like Drew Brees and Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff, when they stand back there and just and throw and have that accuracy, their numbers are always going to look different and better than these guys that move around. Everybody thinks that they can play quarterback until you go in the backyard. Because you're in the backyard, you just stand there and throw it. Try rolling to your left, and then you'll see what the difference is between playing quarterback and throwing a ball. Jaden Daniels, what he's doing right now, the way he plays is kind of unprecedented because those, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, their numbers are always hurt by the way they play. That style of play helps the team, though, versus just standing back in the pocket. So it really is unprecedented to see those accuracy numbers from a guy who is rolling out to his left and then, twisting his body and throwing it, who is flicking it on the run. It is wild.
Mobility-wise, Jaden Daniels is almost second to none. And what's funny is if you look at the overall rushing statistics, he's giving you a top 3 quarterback rushing year right now. But we still haven't seen that immense spike week. Like it's been like week 1, he gives you that 88 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. But it just feels like there's going to be some game where he rips off like 130 rushing yards. It's coming. You can just feel it. So, we could sit here praising Jaden Daniels all show long. It's just incredible what he's doing. But Coop, we're here at Redraft in 5. We also want to help you with your trades, your fantasy football trades. Just like our partner show at Dynasty Trades in 5, we want to get after it, help you improve your roster week after week. We're dropping our waiver wire show. Make sure you're looking for that. But let's talk about your trade target this week. Who are you on, Coop? Who are you sending out offers to in your leagues?
Yeah, this is a guy this offseason. I wrote a big article on why we like him. And again, we stuck with him last week. Now is probably your last chance to trade for Rashid Shaheed. Okay. Well, basically what we've seen, including last week when he had 0 fantasy points because he still got 5 targets. This offense is working the way we thought it would. They're using a lot of fullback. They're rotating guys around, but the top 2 targets, just like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco, just like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in Miami, where they use a very similar scheme. Obviously, Clint Kubiak came over from the 49ers. Those 2 guys are on the field all the time, and they're getting a huge target share. Coming into this week, the target share for Rashid Shaheed on the season, 22-23%, depending what site you're looking at. That was higher than CeeDee Lamb, higher than Stephon Diggs. It's just that 23% of 65 targets, the fewest pass attempts in the league, was only 14 targets. This week, you got a glimpse of what it looks like when this team actually has to throw. 10 targets for both Olave and Shaheed. Now is your last chance. Coming off a 0-point performance last week, the Rashid holder right now, he might still be a little scared. He or she's sitting there. She's like, well, he had 0 points the week before. This week he had 80 yards. This is more like what we're going to see. A guy that's playing every snap, getting 7, 8, 9 targets every game. Go and get Shaheed right now before they realize what they actually
are. And Coop, you've talked at length about the Clint Kubiak offense, about the consolidation. And for us in fantasy football, when we see offenses that are extremely consolidated, we love it because it's easy to predict where the touches go. And we can sort of bank on these guys are starters for us in our lineup. And Rashid Shaheed, gosh, Coop, I wish everybody would have gone and traded for him last week coming off that goose egg. but I still think the market's not fully there. What's interesting is if you look back historically on the Shaheed weeks where he scores effectively in fantasy, usually it comes with like a very big play, maybe a long touchdown. This was the opposite. He gets a 30% target share, and he does that the same week that Alvin Kamara gives you a 25% target share, and that Olave, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Olave was up there as well. Like
he had 11 he had 11 targets. It's like the 49ers if they didn't have Kittle. You know what I mean? It's just 3 guys getting the targets instead of 4. So I mean that's the big upside there. And you have to remember that just like young Tyreek Hill, like Tyreek Hill started out as a guy that was very inconsistent week to week. Go back and watch his like rookie year where he'd have a big play and it would be a punt return or a kick return or it would be, a home run, but he would still play like 60% of the snaps. That was Rashid Shaheed last year. Now Shaheed has graduated to an every down guy, but that big home run hitting guy is still in there. He still can return a punt for a touchdown. I mean, this week he fumbled a punt for a touchdown for the other team. So not ideal there, but it's still in there. The home runs are there, but now he has the floor of actually getting a big target.
Yeah, and speaking of a guy who's getting a big target share, my trade target this week, and this guy could have been my hammer this week, Coop, because I think that the market has not moved on what Deontay Johnson actually is in Carolina. I don't think the market's quite moved at how effective the Dave Canales offense has looked in back-to-back weeks. They lose yesterday to Cincinnati, but the thing that's most important to me is Deontay Johnson, another 30% plus target share week. So last week, he ends up giving you a career high in receiving yards. He gets like a 38% target share. This week, he gives you a 31% target share, catches another touchdown pass, and it's just there for him. 13 targets on the week, 7 catches, 83 yards. Like Deontay Johnson is in such strong shape. I told you in the pre-show, I think if I'm ranking wide receivers for the rest of the year, I'm ranking Deontay Johnson inside of my top 12. And I think that people are okay with him sort of being a wide receiver too. But this is like a perfect storm year for him, man. Perfect storm year. Xavier Legette was solid. Like you had to like what you saw out of Legette in like the Thielen role. Obviously, Chuba / Jonathan Brooks, whenever he shows up, that's effective. But Deontay Johnson was the guy they talked about in the preseason about how he's always their first look. And we're there. Andy Dalton is peppering him. Andy Dalton knows what he has. And this is an offense that's going to lean on him. And you've talked about the Dave Canales offense, how Mike Evans was used last year and sort of crushed his ADP as that outside wide receiver. Now you're seeing it correlate with Deontay Johnson, heavily targeted, used ideally, starting to see numbers from him that we never saw in Pittsburgh. The targets were there in Pittsburgh. He gave you like 3 years where he was like plus 140 targets, but this is just different. It's more of like the offensive focal point, Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, like Big Ben Deontay Johnson, right?
Big Ben, it's actually
where the team's actually scoring touchdowns, right? And I'll tell you, man, like the fact that he came in dealing with a groin, not practicing all week, and they still had him out there virtually every snap, every route, and he got the end zone target early in the game that he didn't pull down, and with the game on the line later, he did pull it down. I mean, he's the guy. Deontay Johnson's the man. They traded a second-round pick for him for that reason, dude. So, you know what? I don't think it's crazy when you come out and you say top 12, wide receiver 1. I don't see why not when you're getting that high consolidation.
Yeah, and Chicago has been a very difficult defense against opposing pass catchers, but we did see Nico Collins have that smash week. This is one where I think Chicago's a difficult matchup for Carolina, but the game flow could also tend towards maybe Chuba Hubbard is a little less effective, and they're going to have to lean on Deontay. So just treat Deontay Johnson like a wide receiver 1, and if somebody in your league is not treating him like a wide receiver 1, you really want to pounce. And anybody who plays Dynasty, the window's open for him as well. We've seen that this is going to be an effective offense with Dave Canales in a very short period of time in Carolina. I think things are trending up there. Coop, we got to talk about your hammer. Who's your hammer this week? A guy that is going to smash in week 5.
Yeah, and it's easy to just pick like, Derrick Henry against the Bengals, but I play a lot of one and done leagues. I play a lot of DFS. So I play like Baby Bowl, Scott Fish Bowl, one and done, where you can use players once and you want to look for certain situations to use that player where it might not be available to you later on. Like anytime I can use a backup running back in a one and done, I do it. And for me, I look at Michael Pittman. And if we're actually going to get Joe Flacco starting at quarterback, going up against these Jaguars safeties who have been brutal. Antonio Johnson and Andre Sisco were Still waiting on the grades from this week, but they once again, let Nico Collins and the guys do whatever they wanted. And they're coming into this week, out of the 120 safeties that were graded, they were both graded outside the top 110 by Pro Football. Antonio Johnson, Andre Cisco, they need Darnell Savage to come back and help them out pretty bad back there, I think. So if we're going to get that situation, this guy with Joe Flacco going up against these Jaguars, I'm in. And especially in those one and dones where Anthony Richardson's going to come back. We love Anthony Richardson. I think he's a good dynasty player. I think he's a good start in fantasy because he can run at any given time. At this given moment, just like last year with Gardner Minshew, I think that Joe Flacco is a better passer of the football than Anthony Richardson, and I don't think that's out of line to say it.
I think I'm with you. I think that it certainly bodes up. Josh Downs is one that I've talked about as a waiver wire candidate for weeks, a guy who just sort of believe in the talent. Downs flashes, but Pittman's the guy there. Pittman was one where he's been sort of the most frustrating player in fantasy over the first 3 weeks. Gives you a week last week where, has his impressive week and he's on a lot of benches. So this week, he'll be back in your lineup. I love that call, and I love that we're going deep this week because I'm also going with a guy that was a little bit slow out the gate. This has been a frustrating year for DJ Moore fantasy managers. Last year, he gave you that incredible wide receiver 6 overall season, sort of the year you've been waiting for with DJ Moore throughout his career. And so far, it's been 6 catches for 53 yards. He had 8 catches for 78 yards, so that was okay. And then last week, then he gives you a 3 catch for I think it was 25 yards or something and a touchdown. Right. But this week, Carolina Panthers. This week is the Carolina Panthers. This is a beatable defense for Caleb Williams. It's a little less pressure on Caleb Williams going up against this Carolina defense. Caleb Williams has not been great, but I do think that this is a squeaky wheel gets the grease type situation. This is DJ Moore against his former team. We love a good revenge game narrative. And I'm going to say for the first time this season, DJ Moore gives you a wide receiver 1 week. He's going to remind you a little bit of what he did last year. Wouldn't be shocked if you get a manufactured rushing attempt out of DJ Moore. I think you're going to get manufactured touches, not only because it's a game that Chicago really, really needs to win, but with Andy Dalton, it's also been one where despite the defensive pressure Chicago is giving you on a weekly basis, Carolina is going to score some points. They're not going to get completely shut out. They can't completely lean on their defense like they did in certain games this year. And I think Chicago's getting a little bit better. So for me, Chicago coming off the win over LA, this is one where they make it 2 in a row and you see a DJ Moore week.
The DJ Moore revenge game up against the Andy Dalton versus the Bears revenge game. What happens when the unstoppable force hits the immovable object? I don't know. I think that hopefully both of them have good revenge game and we get a shootout here, a lot of points scored, and that's how you get these games. I mean, we've seen it with the Bears just the week before last, 90 offensive plays, willing to drop back 60 times. This isn't one of those teams like the Chargers who just kind of, or Patriots that's just willing to lie down and continue with the run game no matter what the script is. We've seen them be willing to play huck it, chuck it football if that's what the game demands. So I'm hoping that Dalton can keep it competitive so that the Bears keep throwing.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And stick with us here at Redraft in 5. We're going to be bringing you shows like this all season long. Make sure you're checking out our waiver wire advice. We're crushing it. I'm Theo Gremminger, Andrew Cooper. Coop, anything to plug this week?
I mean, that's it, man. Check me out over at the Fantasy Alarm YouTube after you're done watching everything on this channel, and over at Dynasty Trades in 5 and on Sirius XM Thursday and Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. and Sunday mornings, 10 to 11.
Yeah, and check out my stuff over at PlayerProfiler. Also doing School of Scott with Scott Barrett over on the Fantasy Points channel. We'll see you soon.